If you've ever thought to yourself, I'd rather just read about this than actually do it, you're not alone. The Enneagram 5 newsletter exists to help you move from knowing to experiencing. Every Saturday, you'll get insights designed to help 5s grow without overwhelm. Sign up for free today at enneagram5.com/newsletter or visit the link in the description. Now on to the show. Well, we're back. We're here with Sam. Welcome again, Sam.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited because this is one of those conversations where we could probably talk for hours and hours, but we won't. Hopefully.
You never know.
You never know. Yeah, so we are talking about informational obsessions, I guess, as a 5. Or another way to put that is rabbit holes that we like to go down. Let's start with, what is a time that you remember where you got completely obsessed or consumed by a topic? So what was that topic and how did it spark your interest?
I guess I'll go first. A lot of the things that I think that I get obsessed about is usually, like, sometimes it's fears. You know, like if I have a fear of something, my natural inclination is to learn everything there is to know about it to dissolve that fear. And I've done that with flying, and I've done that with sharks. And now I'm at a place in my life where I really want to swim with sharks at some point in my life, like great white sharks in a cage, of course. But I just think that'd be a thrilling thing and an interesting way to face that fear. And then flying, I face that fear all the time. I'll be facing that in a couple days when I fly to my parents' house. But what that did is it turns into, now I can literally watch hours of videos of people taking off and landing and like all of the process that does and like all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes for that. And now I kind of want to be a pilot. So like one day I would love to learn how to fly. So yeah, I think that's all it does is it dilutes my passions. You know what I mean? Like it starts spreading everywhere.
Oh, you mean you get interested in a lot of things because you're trying to research your fears, basically?
Right, or research anything that I'm really interested in. Lately, it's been more productive. But if I'm thinking of things that don't have any application in my life, it's usually it either starts with a fear or a curiosity, like a question I ask about, like, I wonder why we do blank or whatever, you know, and you just go down a rabbit hole. Like lately I've been looking at videos of ancient civilizations that lived 25,000 years ago and how that reshapes the way that we think about humanity and society. So I watched that from last night until like 4 a.m.
Did you watch Ancient Apocalypse?
Yeah, on Netflix. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I did. I watched the whole first season last night. So instead of YouTube,
I'm obsessed with that too.
Yeah, it was so good. Oh, and aliens. I've been more into aliens lately than I've ever been. So I've been looking up alien stuff all the time. But outside of that, yeah.
What about you, Sam?
Okay, so before I say this, I'll explain, if people don't know me, that I'm a sexuality researcher for a living. Because this is already weird, but like if you don't know that, it's like too weird. But I went down a rabbit hole of primate sexual behavior, specifically gorillas.
Okay.
Because
what'd you find?
It's actually so interesting. So I went to the zoo. I was watching the gorillas. I was like, I wonder about that. And it's really
interesting.
What were
they doing?
They weren't doing anything sexual, but they were like in their families. Like there was one, the mom was breastfeeding the little baby gorilla and was like so human. And I was like, I wonder what their sexuality is like. And it turns out it's really close to human, to the point that they have like missionary position sex. That like basically you can watch it on YouTube or whatever, but YouTube was in debates about if they should block it as porn because it's so similar to humans.
Interesting. That is interesting.
So emotionally, it's different, but otherwise, like physically,
Hopefully.
what they actually do is really similar to humans. Like the positions they go in is really similar to human sexual behavior. So I think that's super fascinating. I brought it up in a working group meeting of my Enneagram and sexuality people, and they were like, "Why are you talking about this? This is weird."
I'm guessing they're not all fives, clearly.
No, I'm the only 5, and I felt sad and shamed. So then I stopped talking about it.
Yeah,
I'm
we
really
won't be shamed
curious. I'm really curious what ads you get served as you're searching around the web. I can only imagine.
That's a great question. I get a lot, like, because I do like also social media about the Enneagram and sex. I get a lot of targeted Instagram ads of like all varieties. So I'm not sure if it's from that or from other things.
Right. So for me, it's a lot of things. So, and I'm wondering how much our subtypes are affected by this, or our subtypes influence this, because, Cody was talking about like fear, anxieties that really tend to grab his attention. Sam, obviously, you're a sexual subtype and a sexual researcher. And so like, for me, it's the really big, like lofty questions as a social subtype that like impact society and also like get me to think completely differently about my worldview. Anything that like completely destroys my own worldview of something, I get obsessed, and it's like this itch inside my brain that I can't scratch, and so it just drives me crazy until like I can get in there deep enough to scratch it. So I've the big one, as everyone who listens to the show knows, is UFOs. Was one that I really went down really fast and hard in 2020, and it didn't help that we were all sequestered to and then that led to when the COVID vax came out, and I started researching that like crazy because it didn't make sense to me. And then that led me down to like learning about how like medical trials are run and how to read like these studies and what a p-value is, and just like all of this stuff that I shouldn't have to know, but I got like obsessed with that whole topic. And then like, origins of the virus was another big one. And then I got super obsessed with like Bitcoin and that whole rabbit hole, and I went down that, and then that led me to like researching all about macroeconomics and the history of money and the Fed, and then I basically became an anarchist, and then it was like
Yeah, I was going to say, if you follow the stereotypical trajectory of beginning to end, then you're going to end up I can't say that on the podcast. This is what I was going to say, was you'll end up licking Elon Musk's asshole, but because that's the general trajectory, is it's like Bitcoin and like from all the COVID conspiracies to Bitcoin to being like, an asshole who hates women. It's like the general, that is, you just, except for past the Bitcoin, from beginning to Bitcoin, it was the exact trajectory.
Don't fall for the propaganda, Cody.
I could say the same to you.
Yeah, so like these days I listen to a lot of, like economic podcasts and political podcasts and UFO type stuff, and anything that really
the ancient civilization ones is another big one, because I feel like there's a whole part of our history that we don't know about, and there's a conspiracy element to it of maybe people are hiding stuff from us because what it tells us about the nature of reality, but just that's not necessary to also be interested in the topic, and what that could mean, like learning about our deep ancient past, what it can mean for our present and our future. So anything like that could potentially change the trajectory of humanity. Like that's the stuff I get obsessed with.
Yeah, I feel the same way about that one, especially lately because I've been watching it.
So a new informational obsession that I am on is all about perimenopause. I am starting perimenopause, getting some symptoms, and I want to know all about it. I am listening to podcasts, I'm reading books, I'm talking to people, I have joined Facebook groups. I am like a little guinea pig. I am trying supplements to see if one works better than another. And I just, during this time, which could be up to, I guess, 10 years, I want to see, I want to do really well. So I'm trying to kind of get as much information as I can. I do notice that the people that I like, the experts that I connect with, that's where I'll kind of go down that rabbit hole of finding everything about their podcasts, their books, and then try some of their options that they talk about. So that's my new informational obsession. I feel like I have to be an expert because this is brand new to me. But I feel like the more information I have, the more empowered I'll be.
So when you're in that mode of being obsessed, what does that look like for you guys?
The other night, I stayed up late reading about object relations, which is it's a standalone psychological theory, but it's also used within Enneagram theory. So, each Enneagram type is associated with a particular object relations pattern. And there's a book on it. I just got really into it. I stayed up till, I don't remember what time. It was probably like 1:30, which doesn't sound that late until that I have 3 tiny kids that wake me up at like 6. And the rabbit hole thing is just like, it doesn't matter if I want to stop doing it. And I think like I need to go to sleep and I'll be very miserable tomorrow from this. It's like obsessive and addictive. Like I can't stop consuming information, basically.
Yeah, I think that's I think the thing that we have in common in that regard, and maybe listeners as well, is like if there's some puzzle element to what we're looking up that we want to try to solve, whether it's information, conspiracy theories, whatever it is that you said you were looking up, Sam, which I want to know more about. I was just thinking about like the things that I get the most obsessed about are probably like, lately I've been looking up a lot of like tricks and practice, tips and tricks to, music engineering and things that I just didn't know about, Logic, the program that I use. It just came out with a huge update. So I've been learning all about that. And so I can find myself being like, okay, just one more video. And then it's 3 hours later and it's 4 a.m. and I have messed up terribly. Sometimes it's the same with like, I'm going to just nerd out really hard right here for just a second. But like lately I've been playing, I love all things like zombies, especially zombie games. And I've been playing the Call of Duty zombies that just came out. And I've been watching videos on how to unlock all these like puzzles and Easter eggs in all the maps. And there's like 100 of them in each thing. So I find myself watching way too many videos of that. But that's fairly harmless, I think.
Yeah, unless you're staying up till 4 a.m. and you have to get up for work in the morning.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Luckily, my job is on the restaurant and bar schedule, so nobody tries to contact me before 11 a.m. most of the time.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. Definitely not that way when you have kids.
I get work text at 2 a.m. sometimes, like just because that's when they're thinking about it and they're closing down or whatever. So,
oh man, at my worst, I have just especially in the throes of the pandemic in 2020, it was really bad. Where it's like I couldn't get anything done. Like I was just obsessively like consuming like videos and articles and whatever I could get my hands on. And to the point where like I was trying to run my own business and it was miserable because I couldn't, like, even when I was working on the stuff I was supposed to be working on, there was this little thing in the back of my head of like, okay, you could take a break and go over here and watch this podcast episode about, the UFOs and nukes and why they're so drawn to nuclear facilities and the history of how that's been covered up. Like there's just like, it's gotten really bad. So I think that I've tried to, like, these days, I try to have dedicated times when I can scratch that itch and also do something that is relatively productive, and then have clear cutoff points. Like, one of the things we've talked about is like I go for a walk every morning for usually about 45 minutes. And I have like a queue of podcast episodes, always ready to go. And I listen to them at 2x speed. And so I get through a lot in just like that short walk. And that helps me, one, I'm scratching that itch, but I'm also waking up my body and my brain at the same time, which is helpful in the mornings because I'm definitely not a morning person.
Yep, I agree with that for sure. I think that's probably a good way to like separate it out too, like, and so that you don't get too distracted. Maybe, I don't know. I feel the same way though. I try to like mix in the unproductive information consumption with also productive information consumption. I think stuff that I actually need in my life that I want, or things that I really want to learn about, right? Like, before we went to Italy, I was trying to learn Italian, at least some basic form of Italian to be able to communicate. And so like I got really obsessed with that for a little while, but like, and honestly, those are the ones, it's like when you consume a meal that's really bad for you and how you feel afterwards versus when it's like super healthy. And it's like, maybe you didn't enjoy the information, the consumption process as much, but afterwards you feel so much better about yourself. And that's how I differentiate between the types of information I take in.
Sam, I'm really curious how you can set those kinds of boundaries given that you're a professional researcher. How does that work?
Yeah.
That is a great question. I think it helps that like I get paid to research things, because the years of my life where that wasn't true, I had a lot more of like the junk food information consumption that Cody just described. And I haven't had a big problem with that since I started my PhD, which I'm finished now, but just that set me on a whole trajectory of like, you're allowed to go down rabbit holes. It's just like you choose them wisely and you do productive research on them. That's great. I mean, I don't think there's a better job for a 5 than researcher. I don't feel like there's any way I could be happier in my professional life than I am. I feel very lucky. Because, like, if we don't get to do it all day, we're just withering away with boredom, like, at all times. And this is what makes us feel alive. It's just we don't want to have to stay up till 4 a.m. to do it.
Yeah, I always thought a journalist would be a good job for a 5 in that way. Like, I thought about being a journalist for a while. Just uncovering stories and researching things all day just sounds like fun. And
not even having to research. I did previously to my current life work as a researcher for organizations where I had to research what they said. I love that too. I mean, that was great. Yeah. But even getting to choose mostly what I research is like amazing.
True.
So what does that actually look like in the day to day? So you're doing research, and like, what are you doing with the research?
These days I honestly do more like clinical work, like more therapeutic coaching work. But I will like deep dive into whatever problems people have going on and research that. But then previously I would just research whatever piece of my study needed research backing. So like anything about, for example, I have a whole mini chapter in my dissertation on the psychometric instruments that you can use to measure Enneagram type and if they're good or not, and like the validity and reliability of each one, and how often it's been used and what it's used for and like what's the style of it. I love doing that. It's really boring to read probably for other people. So it's
Not
that
us.
I would just, yeah, I would just be like every day deep dive into the part that I was writing about. So then I had like a huge deep dive on sexuality. I have a huge deep dive on just Enneagram typing in general, like just tons of little mini subtopics. And then I would spend the day or many days researching basically every piece of research that's ever been done on that thing. And then synthesizing it. That's how you do a literature review. So it's very fun.
That does sound fun. That is one thing that, we've talked through the negative side of being obsessed with consuming information, but there's definitely positives around that. Like, part of my job is pretty complex and I have to do quite a bit of research and it in the past hasn't always been on things I've been super interested in, which is one of the reasons why I'm excited about my new job, is that it's much more aligned with the stuff that I'm interested in. An example of this is earlier this year when I was I had the bandwidth to actually start doing some content for Enneagram 5. I researched the hell out of all of that because that was my previous podcast was content creation, and so I kind of dusted that off and then started going into all the different aspects of it, from how to like the psychological pieces of copywriting all the way to like how to organize a system to do it efficiently, and then I put it in practice, and I formed some very, very strong opinions on where social media is going, how to engage, and how to like basically how to create content in a way where you can test and experiment and hone your craft and start to figure out like how to win at that game. And
That's great. Maybe we'll get better at it.
Yeah, maybe
Teach us your ways.
once I get back into the swing of things, and so I form these strong opinions, and then that's actually the main thing that landed me the job that I have now, because now I'm working for a social media scheduling platform, and they hired me because in my interview I was very, very vocal about like, this is where I think it's going, and here's the gaps of what you have now, and here's a place we can go where your competitors probably aren't even thinking about, but it's going to create a lot of value in the market. And just like, but I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation if I hadn't been obsessed for like 4 months with this topic and attacked it from all these different angles and was able to speak about it and have a strong opinion. So there are definitely upsides to this obsessive nature of ours.
That makes me think of two things. One, Josiah, I remember when we worked together on that workshop and you were like, here is like the correct way to split profits and like the correct way to advertise. And I was like, okay, I believe you. Like you can just trust a 5 if we've been down the rabbit hole, that you can just believe what we say. I mean, nobody's a better researcher than a 5. So I think that's something other types sometimes don't know, is they don't have to do it. They can just ask a 5 who's done it and then trust what we say. But that also makes me think about the difference between just like passive research and then active, action generally. Like you're talking, Josiah, about then doing a whole job of the thing that you research. Now you're in the real world doing it. Like there's a big difference between just learning about something and doing it. And sometimes 5s aren't so good at the doing it part.
Yeah, that's really true. And in that action piece, like that's where it starts to feel good and productive. Where, spending 100 hours researching UFOs might feel good in the moment, but after a while it doesn't, because you can't actually do anything with it. It's like, this doesn't really change my life in any meaningful way, at least not anytime soon. And so, although I have considered falling back on that as a different career path. when I was like,
chasers.
What do I want to do when I was getting really frustrated with where I was at, and that was one of the things on my possibility list of like, maybe I just go research UFOs for a living. That would be fun.
My current informational obsession is the link that may or may not exist between autism and pelvic floor dysfunctions. It appeals to me because, one, it's interesting that there might even be a link there at all, but two, because it's relevant to the job that I do, and it's really niche, and it is often overlooked as a complicating factor for people. So researching it, how I go about it is looking for and reading a lot of research studies and scientific papers on both autism and pelvic floor dysfunction separately. And if I can find them conjointly, then that as well. I also talk to, when I get the chance, to pelvic floor physical therapists who have worked with similar populations and kind of taken what they see from their profession, because I don't have the physical training that they have. And so their input is often really important to me. And then cataloging stories of people who fit both things and mining that for information as well. So it's really a multifaceted research approach, which I think fits me as a FI really well.
Kind of along those same lines, was there a moment when your research or your knowledge ever like made you feel particularly confident, or even kind of like save the day?
Save the day, very dramatic. I like it.
Well, sometimes I think about like that is the romanticized version of what we're doing. Is we're consuming all of this information so that we can be prepared to have that information in that moment when we need it, and so we think of it as like our superpower a lot of the times, and that's what we're looking for, is kind of a moment to use our superpower.
I don't know if this answers it, but when something happens, like something bad happens, something negative happens to someone that I love, I will, if relevant, research whatever's going on completely, like ad nauseum. And I always find things that they themselves didn't find, even if they were like really deeply researching their own condition or diagnosis or whatever. I feel like it's usually health stuff. And I have helped, in really practical ways. Like I had a friend who had a bad burn, and she like didn't understand what was going on with the nerve regrowth and why she's having so much pain. And then I explained the whole theory of it, and then she, felt so much better about what was going on. Like that kind of stuff happens a lot to me. And I think that also speaks to how we handle things. Like when we handle things that go awry is by researching them, basically.
Yeah, goes back to the fears. Trying to, I think that I do the same thing. Basically, I feel like I'm in the habit now of like, every single time I have a question pop up in my head, or somebody asks a question that nobody knows the answer to, I'm like, give me 5 minutes. Like, I'll have a basic 1 paragraph description of whatever this question is. And that's come in handy in, I've also just had a lot of jobs in my life. Because, working in churches, I always had other jobs to supplement. So I've had something like 40 something jobs probably in my adult life. And so I have all these like random little tidbits of knowledge that like have come in handy before. I have saved the day when I went to see a movie in the theater and it stopped working and nobody knew how to fix it because I used to be a projection manager. And I'm like, did you try resetting this and turning this off? And like, no. And so they go do it and it worked. And everybody cheered in the theater, and I like to think they were cheering for me, but they just didn't know.
Cody.
Lifts me up on their shoulder. It's like an 80s teenage movie. Yeah, that's my silly version of the story. I feel like I have probably a situation that's happened where information came up and I'm like, oh my God, I know the answer to this. Honestly, I've helped win a night of trivia for that reason. I'm like, I never thought this information would ever come to, I need this information in a situation. Here we are. So, yeah.
See, I don't like trivia because I feel so inadequate. And it makes me so anxious because I'm like, there's no way I have enough information going into trivia to be able to do well and then be able to recall it,
All right, Mr. Social 5, here's what you actually do that makes you enjoy trivia. I have learned. You go with a group of people that all have different backgrounds and passions. So we have a pretty good group. You would absolutely, you should come with us sometime. We go to, a shitty Mexican place and have shitty margaritas for $2. And we are a part of this trivia night. And somebody usually knows something that gets us through to almost every time top 3. But like, I just, so this is how you enjoy it. You don't feel like you need to know every answer to every question. You just wait for the questions you definitely do know the answer to. And now you get to step up. And I can tell you right now, every single time how I come through: movies, TV shows, and comic books. Those are the 3 things, because music is usually something super technical, and there's usually 2 or 3 people in our group that teach like classical music or band or whatever, and so they know those answers. I let them have that. Mathematics, not going to be my thing. Science, every once in a while. Geography, that's what makes me feel the most inadequate. I have no idea how Europe is laid out. They're like, what are the 5 lakes in the world? And I'm like, I'm out. So yeah, you just never know. But I think it's part of it'd be good practice for you if you're that scared of it to try it. But just do it in a group. Don't go by yourself.
Okay, fair enough. Well, maybe you could invite me since you've never invited me until now.
Well, yeah. Usually you don't come out and do things, so I don't think about it. But now that I know that you might, well, I don't know what you'd be interested. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. We could talk about this afterwards. Sam, you need to live closer. We would make a really good foundation for a trivia team. The 3 of us would.
That's true. Although it does make me anxious also for the same reason that Josiah said.
I kind of going back to this obsessive mindset. How do you know when you've gone too far? And you need to pump the brakes, take a step back, and take a little breather, come up for air. What are some signs that you notice?
When your eyes start to hurt from looking at screens too long.
My big one is when it starts isolating me from everybody around me. So if it's like I'm obsessing about something and I'm trying to fix something and Madison comes in we haven't talked in hours and I've been home for a while. It's like something like that. I'm like, okay, I should probably take a break. And because I'll get super tunnel vision. I don't know if you want to call it 5 mixed with Asperger's, but I'll get so hyper focused that I forget to eat. A really good example is tonight, because I was in here trying to do I'm trying to finish this song I want to release next month, and so I've been trying to work on that, and I forgot that I ordered food on Uber Eats, and it had been sitting at the front door for 19 minutes. And I was like, oh shit, what am I doing? I need to go eat. And so, but I'll forget to eat altogether if I'm not careful. And like, especially something I'm really interested in that is applicable, like watching videos of people doing, music engineering stuff. Like I can easily do that till I'm like not sleeping or eating because I just get really obsessed over it. So that's probably like the big picture sign is like, oh, I haven't eaten except once today because I've been doing all this stuff all afternoon or all evening or whatever, and wrecked my day.
Yeah, lack of eating and sleeping is a big one. I think the big red flag for me is when it starts to interfere with my human interactions, where it's like people are trying to have a conversation with me and I can't even listen because I'm still thinking about all this stuff in my head.
Yeah,
or
that's
like,
part of what I mean with like isolation, for sure.
Yeah, or like at its worst, when it was really bad, I would then like be waiting for the conversation to be over so I could get back to, and so then the human interactions became like a nuisance or even like a burden. That was really bad.
I agree with the isolation thing. I feel like it's tricky because sometimes I wouldn't notice because I would be doing, and for me it was my work that I was also needed to do, but I would get so into it, and then when I would be off, not working on it, I would be so irritable and like mean and snap at people because anything they were doing to try to get me to like be a human and with a body in the world, I was mad at them because I wanted to still be in my head. And it was really subtle. Like I didn't realize it was happening until people were like, why are you so mean right now? I was like, oh, I've been like researching too hard, basically.
Yeah, the research fatigue. It definitely, it's similar to like, that's a similar feeling to when you are just feeling so drained from being around people too long and you get that same irritability. I've definitely felt that. And couple that with like what you said, Josiah, about it's all you could think about. So then when you are talking to other people, not only are you already irritated or irritable, but also you're still thinking about the thing that you're obsessed about. So it's like, or whatever it is you've been researching. Yeah, it's definitely derailing.
So then when you notice these signs, like how do you start to pull yourself out?
Turn off the screen.
Not very effectively, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get out of the rabbit hole. I think physicality is the best way. Like, go for a walk, work out, but not listen to podcasts at the same time, which is what we do. We're like, okay, well, if I'm going to walk, I'll at least like give my brain something, but actually just be in your body. Anything that gets you in your body, yoga, whatever, that stuff really helps, but it's hard to motivate because it just feels so good in the research hole.
Maybe diversifying the portfolio, like spread out your interests. So like, I feel like in terms of like, yes, I agree to some degree. It's like, you don't want to, you don't want to be listening to podcasts about maybe what you're researching, but I think there's some benefit to like it. Maybe go for a run and listen to a podcast about something that doesn't matter or something else that's not related to that, just to get your mind off of something else. Because like sometimes if I just, it's like take out that cartridge of information and put a new one in just to like give yourself a palate cleanser. It's you come back to it a little bit more sober minded when you're researching a very intense topic or something. I feel like. Yeah. And the other thing that comes up for me too is, especially when you're researching stuff like conspiracy theories, you can start to get really cynical, and that's another red flag for me. Is like, and I've gotten cynical and also really schizo, and paranoid, and so I think that coming back into like my anchor relationships, the people who are kind of those pillars in my life, and forcing myself to engage. I like what you're talking about, the physicality is so true. And also I hate that that's the answer because that's the last thing I want to do. And thankfully, because I have 3 rambunctious boys,
they're pretty good about like not listening to my boundaries and just forcing me into wrestling and stuff like that, you know? And to the point where like I will usually eventually give in. And then I'm always glad that I do afterwards, because that getting into that spirit of like play and you know, wrestling and goofing off like that helps me disengage my brain and get out of research mode and be more present in the moment, for sure.
So what's interesting is my main informational obsession of my life is the Enneagram.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like professionally, personally, everything. It's the whole reason I pursued a degree and studied it is because it was already my research obsession. So I get like an excuse to continue the obsession all the time because it's also like what pays my bills and it's what I'm supposed to be doing. But what's weird is, like, just I want to talk about how this ties in socially, because I'll go to, you know, a dinner or whatever, and I have nothing to say. Like, I don't feel like talking. People ask me stuff, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then they're like, oh, you're into that Enneagram thing, right? Like, what's that about? And then I'm off a mile a minute talking for like an hour straight.
Sure.
Just like once in a while checking their face to make sure they're still listening. So, like, how do you guys react when someone asks you about the thing that you happen to be, like, obsessively researching at that time?
Oh, it's so hard.
I try really hard not to just be like a dam that just broke. The problem, though, for me is that I don't pick up the cues of when people are not interested anymore. So I think for me, it's like trying to constantly be mindful of checking in with body language around me and be like, are they even facing me anymore? Like, are we still into this conversation? Because, you know, like people, you know, you're a psychologist. People start to like move their body away from you when they're not interested. They can't help it. Their shoulders move. And so, and especially like if they're ready to leave, then they just start facing towards the door without unconsciously doing it. And so I think that that's definitely part of it for me. But like, I don't know, I feel like it's harder for me than most people I know to like shut the hell up after somebody opens that, you know, that dam of information.
It's really hard. And I thankfully have gotten better at it over time, but it's taken a lot of practice. And to Cody's point, like the social cues was not something that came naturally to me, and I had to practice and learn how to pick up on them and then what to do about it. And then also
you still suck at it sometimes.
Yeah, well, shut up. So to also not take it personally when they do lose interest. I think that's another big piece of it, because in the past, it has been an excuse to then disengage again. And then now I try to catch myself when I do that, you know, and then try to find something else to talk about that they're interested in, that I am also interested in. And
what if there is nothing?
There is, yeah.
Like a lot of people don't have interesting things that they want to talk about.
Yeah, well,
to us anyway.
To us. Then what I do is I have these frameworks that I'm interested in, like the Enneagram, and then I do my best to ask them about something that they're passionate about, and then try to figure out like how that fits into the framework and form sort of that profile of them, right?
So you make it fun for yourself.
I make it fun for myself internally, if I can't do it in the conversation itself.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's a great idea. Just make everyone your private playthings in like the game of life. Like they're not people. They're just like, how do they fit in my framework? I've never thought about trying that, and now I will.
In a way that
as long as you're not like manipulating them.
Yeah. It can't be harmful to them. Because I've also done manipulation just for fun because I'm bored too. Just see if I can get people to fight with each other and all that kind of stuff. So I think
that's
that there's
not so good.
No, I mean, I haven't done that in many years. I was a different person in my early 20s. But I think that I do the exact same. It's like people watching, but you're doing it in such a different way. Like you're just, you know, poking and prodding to see how people answer questions and like what it is they're interested in. And yeah, I agree with you. I do the same thing with the Enneagram. Like the Enneagram is literally like my map of categorization when I'm around people, to be like, okay, they're kind of starting to fit into this box. Let me see how this goes if I go this direction with it, you know? Yeah.
This is brilliant. I've never thought about doing this because I do typing. Like for a living, I type people, help them figure out their type, and I'm pretty good at it. And I've never thought about just using conversation to try to type people in my life, regular people I encounter for fun when I run out of things to say to them. I just be like, what's your relationship to your goals? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah. What was it like growing up with your parents? What kind of siblings did you have? You just like asking little questions, and it's like, they're like, wow, they're so interested in me. And we're just mapping out their entire personality in our heads.
Yeah. And I've done a bit of research around small talk as well to try to get better at small talk. And then also,
good for you.
Having done podcasting, there's an art to how to ask questions and not ask questions and active listening. And so and all of that, again, are things that don't come naturally. So it's something that I have to practice, but having a medium like this has been really helpful, because it gives us an opportunity to practice. And then in my job too, because it's a very visible role, and I'm usually giving presentations to the company and like facilitating like hard discussions and things like that. But that is something that I had to build up to over many, many years, because, before I had no idea how to interact with people, like, especially because I was homeschooled for half of my school life and was very socially awkward. Like, it was something I had to play catch up on. But I was motivated to do it, I think, partially because I'm a social dominant 5, and it was a puzzle that I wanted to figure out. But it has been very painful to get to where I am with it.
That's the difference between me and you too. We have the same story in terms of homeschooling. It's just reversed, because you did it from the beginning to middle school, right? And so
7th grade. Yeah.
7th grade. And so I was 4th grade until I graduated. And so, but the difference is your social side kicked in and wanted to go back to school. And I was like, this is awesome. I get to choose who I'm around all the time. Like, this is amazing. I can just not be friends with somebody and never have to see them again. It was very empowering as a teenager that liked to be by myself.
This is possibly adjacent topic, but I use the sexual instinct to navigate these things rather than actually learn how to have a conversation about topics that people really want to know about. Like, I just use chemistry or like intrigue or mysteriousness to kind of like capture people's attention and like, get them energetically interested. And then I don't have to say anything really. It's like they're interested anyway. And that's something like sexual 5s do, because we don't know what the fuck we're doing socially, but it's like, oh, we're like captivating though. Like, don't you want to talk to me? But now I'm just going to let you talk. And I've done that for my whole life. And it's just in my 30s occurring to me that maybe I could learn actually how to interact socially just on its own.
Yeah. I think it's weird because I feel like in your 30s, it's like rediscovering what authenticity looks like. And realizing that in those moments you're not being authentic with yourself or them by like just navigating the conversation that way. Because I feel like that's me. Like I still hate small talk. I have no desire to be better at small talk. I don't want it in my life. But
me either.
Yeah. And like that's why I'm like, good for you, Josiah. I'm really happy for you. We're
gonna have to do a small talk episode now.
Admirable, Josiah.
Yeah, it's a very admirable of you. Such a saint. But
yeah, I'm definitely a saint.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that I just start to crave real connection with people. So then it makes it worthwhile to try to learn how to do those things than it did before, where it was like, maybe it was just about me, and I just didn't want to admit that.
Informational obsessions, for me, isn't just a one thing. It's not what am I into and what do I have to spend every waking hour looking into. It's everything. It's every facet of my life. If I read an article about something, the only logical next step is to read 10 more articles about it and to dig into the people behind it and the why and how did it even become a thing. It's also a way to make sure that I have control over whatever it is that's going on. If I buy a new technical tool, I read the manual. And in the olden days, you used to get those. Now I have to go find them. I will look up a manual to read those battery warnings. I mean, does anyone ever have a problem with the battery or the warnings that come with it? But I read them because that's what it's there for. It's a way for me to control my work environment. If I'm going to provide the best service for my customers, wouldn't it stand to reason that I'm the most knowledgeable on the topic? If I find out that something changed or something upgraded or the new release included a feature that I'm not aware of, that's basically just failure. Pack it up, go home. So it's important to me in my everyday to research it. Even if it's something as silly as the pagan root sources for some of the most popular religious celebrations, or something as valid as making sure I'm up to speed on the latest and greatest at my job. It's complete.
I guess one more thing I'm curious about is how do you know when it's time to stop researching something? Like, how do you get to the point where you feel like you have enough information?
Oh, I do have thoughts on that. So, when I first was seeing clients, which was about 5 years ago, I would come to every session with like a full page of handwritten notes on whatever they were going through and how it related to my research and how it related to the Enneagram and how it related to like various psychological theories. And I intended every time to get through the whole page. And A, it was way too much. B, it was not that helpful to people. And what happened is like I had another kid and I just ended up not having time to do that. And I realized that what people really needed was for me to hold space for them. And that required basically no information. And if they needed information, I had enough and it would just be there. And then what's interesting is recently my youngest is turning 1 and I'm having a little more space and I started doing the notes thing again. Like it's like a compulsion. I started bringing, like pre-researching and bringing notes. And then the sessions that I do that for, they're not going that well. It's like people don't actually want to be bombarded with facts. They want love. Like they want you to care for them. So for me, it's been like a really real and real-time learning process in my work with people, with coaching, of I actually did need to stop researching. I literally researched, for a living, the topic that I was helping them with. And I basically just needed to stop and just be there for them. And there was a lot of feedback in the moment of that being better, that being a better way to do it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I feel like I think it's almost like an addiction. It's like an addictive feeling to like, how much do we love learning about something and then putting it on paper all together, concentrated with bullet points and all of the things, right? Like
it's the best.
I love doing that for no reason at all. I have just a collection of all kinds of information filed away whenever I learn something. I always start a new note, anything that I'm doing, whether it's useful or not useful, just for my own self. It's like if I'm trying to form an opinion on a topic or something, or like, if it's an idealism of something that like that is a concept that I want to try to create a framework around, that I have an opinion, I'll write out all of that information or type it all out and then hone it in until I have the opinion that I want, or not that I want, but that I feel like it's an adequate opinion on something. And so, because it also helps me remember that information. So I get that completely. But I also get how often we are too much for other people when it comes to information. I think of when it's time to stop. A good example is whenever I'm going to buy something. You know,
I love researching things, like when I'm trying to, you know, make a decision around something that I need to buy, especially if it's technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I can use the most recent thing that I researched as an example, because I used to paralyze myself I couldn't make a decision because I would research and I would think, okay, I think I have a good idea. And then I'd find some piece of information or a review on a product or something and be like, oh, now I'm questioning the whole thing. Let's start from scratch. And I used to do that all the time. And I mean, I still do it all the time, but I think there's a certain point where I just have to, something that I do now that I did not do even just months ago, is that there's a point where I feel like I have a good idea of the top 2 products, like we're going to talk about something I'm buying, top 2 products that I'm looking at. Okay, these have rose above the rest in my research for days or whatever, right? And so I have these 2 things, and then there's a certain point where I just have to go, okay, here's pros and cons on this one, here's a pros and cons list on this one, this is the good and the bad reviews. What does my gut say? Like, I just got to go with it, you know, because most things have a 30-day return. And I tell myself about that too, because it's easy for me to forget because you don't want to go through that whole process. But I think I just do it. Yeah, it's a gut feeling. It's like I've learned to trust my gut in a way that I always found to be invalid before. I always thought that was not trusting information. You don't want to trust your gut because that's just feelings and emotions, and those things are bad. And you want to talk about ways that the podcast has helped me in my life. Emotions are not bad, right? I learned that from this podcast.
I'm with you there. Learning to trust my instincts, my intuition is a big part of that. And also recognizing when the research goes from being helpful to being an excuse to not take action or to make a decision, like that procrastination phase. That's one of the main ways that I will procrastinate, is like researching, getting more information. And I think that it doesn't take much for us to start to become aware of when that happens. It's a lot harder to develop the habit of stopping that before it gets out of control, but at least starting with like being aware of, this is no longer serving me, and I have enough information to at least take the next couple of steps. And then if I need to come back and do more research at that point, I can. But then it's just making it's figuring out what kind of my cutoff point is to take the next action, like the next step. So a lot of times when I'm researching something to where I need to actually use information to do something that productive, you know, researching that we talked about, I start with what my objectives are, what it is I'm actually trying to get out of that, out of the research, and what I'm going to need to do. And then as I'm doing the research, I'm going back to that list and saying, okay, what are those steps, and do I have enough information to take the next one? And then usually that answer is yes, and then I can go ahead and take it.
You know, actually, another thing that I do now that I didn't do before was I kind of ask the questions of why I'm looking up the thing to begin with. And I type it out sometimes. So you're talking about like collecting information, right, for us to be able to have for whatever reason. Sometimes it's helpful in just researching things. If it's like I said, using an example of a product, like, why do I want that thing? What am I going to use it for? What are all of the the list of reasons why I need this thing? And that helps me go, okay, check box. I'm done researching. This thing covers all the things, you know? And so I think, and that's the case with most topics. I feel like it's like, if I know why I'm looking it up and I answer that question, that primary question, I try to stop.
Thematically, we were all talking about things other than the head, basically. I was talking about being heart-centered, and then Cody, you mentioned gut, and Josiah mentioned intuition. Basically, like, we need to remember that there's other ways of making decisions outside of our mind, just researching and learning facts.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. couldn't said it better myself. I think it's a good place to stop.
Cool.
All right.
See you next time.
Until next time.
Bye.
Hey, it's Josiah, and I wanted to say thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you're the type of person who likes helping others, would you do us a favor and share it with other people like you? If you found value in this conversation, they will too. I also want to give a special thanks to our community members who shared their voice with us in this episode. If anything in this conversation has resonated with you, or if you have any further thoughts or questions, I want to invite you to join our community of other people like you and continue the conversation at Enneagram5.com.